This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
Tonight, for our 263rd episode, we go back to the future for a G-Mote first. We're going to completely redo an episode 16 of our show. And to help us, we recruited the original guests from that episode to come back and help us redo the episode. So please welcome in Alex and Thomas.
Big greetings from Germany.
Yes, our German friends from over yonder, my uncle and his best friend, have rejoined us once again to redo the episode they were on 5 years ago. But this time we are celebrating the upcoming, I guess it's in a month. We're pre-recording this, so it's technically 2024, but several months from now when this episode will drop, it will be very close to the, I believe, 40th anniversary for this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, Dad. You were what, in college?
I was in college. I went and saw this at the theater.
Cool.
Yeah, 20s Dana. I wonder what that world was like.
I was a lot stuffier than I am now.
It's incredibly difficult to believe that.
You had the chance to enjoy movies in cinema like Star Wars, like Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, of course.
And
What a great time.
You walk out of the cinema and you're standing in a line for the cinema and somebody walks out and says, who would have ever known that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father?
That's true. And we just discussed that episode technically in a Back to the Future mode. Since we're pre-recording this, we will have just released those episodes a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is a weird way to talk about things. Is like, yes, we just did that, but 4 months into the future. Anyway, I suppose that's fitting for this evening.
Remembering that as a kid, when I watched Star Wars for the first time, I didn't get the plot or anything, but they had lightsabers. So they got me alone with that.
My first movie was Return of the Jedi, and the two other movies, it took like 2 years before I could see them. No issue.
No problem.
It was cool.
Star Wars has always been meant for kids, so I'm that holds up. But anyway, as I mentioned before, tonight we're rediscussing Back to the Future for its 40th anniversary in a few weeks. Written and directed by Robert Zemeckis with Bob Gale, music by Alan Silvestri. Starring Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, Christopher Lloyd as Emmett Doc Brown, Leah Thompson as Lorraine Baines McFly, Crispin Glover as George McFly, Thomas F. Wilson as Biff Tannen, Claudia Wells as Jennifer Parker, Mark McClure as Dave McFly, and Wendy Jo Sperber as Linda McFly. Recognition for this movie? Back to the Future was released on July 3rd, 1985. It was a critical and commercial success, earning $381.1 million to become the highest-grossing film of 1985 worldwide. Critics praised the story, humor, and the cast, particularly Fox, Lloyd, Thompson, and Glover. Back to the Future would be nominated for 4 Oscars. Can any of you name them?
Best sound editing?
Okay. Yes, Best Sound Editing Effects was the one it won.
No clue. Special effects?
Best song?
So it was nominated for Original Song for Power of Love, Best Original Screenplay, and Sound. So this is when the sound category was still split. There was sound editing, and there was just Best Sound. Back to the Future was released on VHS on May 22nd, 1986, priced at a whopping $79.95, becoming the first film to sell 450,000 units at that price point, and was also the most rented cassette of the year. The Back to the Future soundtrack was released in July 1985 on cassette tape, LP record, and compact disc. The soundtrack's lead single, The Power of Love, peaked at number 1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. Sales were initially slow, but it eventually peaked at number 12 on the Billboard 200 in part because of the success of The Power of Love. The film would go on to spark 2 sequels in 1989 and 1990 with additional commercial success. In 2004, the New York Times listed it as one of the 1,000 best movies ever, and the following year its screenplay was listed as the 56th greatest screenplay of the preceding 75 years by the Writers Guild of America. Throughout the rest of the 2000s, it appeared on Film 4's 50 Films to See Before You Die at number 10, Empire's 500 Greatest Movies of All Time at number 23, and the American Film Institute listed it as the number 10 best science fiction film based on a poll of 1,500 people from the creative community. In 2010, Total Film named it one of the 100 greatest movies ever made, and the following year it was voted by BBC Radio number 1 and BBC Radio 1 Extra listeners as their 4th favorite film of all time. It is also listed in the film reference book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. A 2014 poll of 2,120 entertainment industry members by The Hollywood Reporter ranked it as the 12th best film of all time. In 2015, the screenplay was listed as the 67th funniest on the WGA's 101 Funniest Screenplays list, and Rotten Tomatoes also listed the film at number 84 on its list of 200 essential movies to watch. Back to the Future currently holds a 93% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 87 score on Metacritic, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this movie?
I saw it at the theater with my friend from high school, Eric Stoner. Shout out to Eric. Yeah, we had a little bit of an argument because in the movie, because I remember going, oh, well, they got Huey Lewis to play the guy on the school committee about, or to judge whether he gets to be in the talent show. And Eric argued with me that that was not Huey Lewis. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
I honestly can't remember the first time that I saw this movie. I think I've probably seen it about maybe 5 or 6 times total. This is probably the first time I've seen it since we did the original episode, to be quite honest. So that's like 5 years ago. And that's about right. So not a lot of history for me comparative to our 2 guests, who apparently this is, what, your favorite film of all time, your second favorite film of all time, your favorite film of the 80s, something like that?
Top 5. Clearly top 5.
Yes, I agree.
But less me, much more him.
Well, it's not, or it started because of my brother. Matthias, he's 3 years older, and he had more access to many other movies. So I was very young at this time. He, as 3 years older than me, he got me movies to see, which I'm usually maybe been too young for. But it was very good to have him in this case. I enjoyed it very much because of the combination of drama, of sci-fi, of CGI, of
music. Very important.
Music, of course, very important. The music, and I watched it, I don't know, 20, 30 times. And last evening, the first time in English.
Second time.
Second time?
Second time. Back then was the first time.
Oh, we really did that?
We did it.
Oh, okay.
We watched it one time.
Second time in English.
Back then.
Okay. How old were both of you in 1985?
6 years old.
Okay. So yeah, this is something you grew up with. All right, that makes sense then. So just out of curiosity, what else would be in your top 5 movies consideration? Do you have, what's in that pool?
Very...
I mean, no need to mention Star Wars here.
The original or something else, a different episode?
Oh, no, the episode...
4 to 6 from Beginning New Hope.
7, 8, 9 are the very best Star Wars movies ever.
What? No!
Are you seriously asking this, Thomas? We are, of course, talking about the original.
I'm just saying, for some people, they want to separate it, that it's like episode 4 and episode 5 are both in the top 5 for them. I'm not obviously saying 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3 should be considered among the great films like 4, 5, and 6 are.
Okay, let me get clearer here. I'm talking of 3.5, 4, 5, and 6. And 3.5 is, of course, Rogue One.
Okay. So Back to the Future and 4 different Star Wars movies. Gotcha.
Then let me fill this for me.
The Matrix,
of course. I loved totally Ready Player One because it's so 80s. I'm a big fan of Groundhog Day. I'm such a big fan of Groundhog Day.
Oh, yes. Blues Brothers, absolutely Blues Brothers.
Not so much me, but I love very much the last Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, because of the reunion of all the 3 actors.
All right. So a lot of nostalgia there. Okay. But getting back to the Future here, what is the film about?
It's about a teenager finding a way to his parents, maybe.
So I guess maybe for a context sake, and I was going to save this for our Did You Know section, but if you watched the Netflix series, The Movies That Made Us,
yes.
The inspiration for the film largely stems from Bob Gale discovering his father's high school yearbook and wondering whether he would have been friends with his father as a teenager. Gale also said that if he had the chance to go back in time, he would really go back and see if they would have been friends. So I do think there is a spiritual connection where you're trying to not only understand your parents, but whether or not your parents might understand you, and that whether there is some similarity, whether you're just completely different people. It's grappling with who your parents are, who you are, and whether there would be overlap. And I guess on a show where I have, for over 200 and some episodes at this point, shared a microphone with my father, I don't think there's really any cause to think that we wouldn't have been friends.
I personally think this film is about incest.
Wow, Dad, way to take us down rather quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have at least couched it and said it was like a reverse Oedipus thing, but...
I could, but I just thought the shock value of the term incest would be even funnier.
But when you're asking so deep question, Thomas, I'm actually thinking of that scenes when Marty's mom told him that she would never have done things like that back then.
Parking.
Never doing parking with the boy. And when she was sitting next to him in the car, she told him, Marty, I'm 18 years old. I, of course, did already do parking with a boy before. So this is the typical lying that the parents do to the kids, what they, of course, never have done and never would have done in the past, what they, of course, did.
Are you saying that my mother was lying to me all these years about things that she would have never done in her youth?
I have very, very extremely bad news for you. Your mother had sex, not only one time. And here it comes, your grandmother also.
Well, now you're just getting cruel. I mean, the mother's one thing, but to bring my grandma into it, come on.
You will never get the pictures out of your head.
That is very true.
Yeah. Like the time you came to me when I came home from work and said, Mom said that premarital sex is not all it's cracked up to be, and so you shouldn't be feeling a need to have any. And I said, really? I thought, but I never knew.
So yes, I do think there's a lot of relating to your parents. And so I will bring up something that I just had in a podcast I was listening to this morning that unfortunately is a question only for my father, but as a full-fledged parent for many years at this point, yourself, now that you are a parent, do you understand your children or your parents more?
Oh, I understand my children much more. And that's because I had more involvement in how you were raised and developed. It's taken a long time for me to understand my dad. And I still not sure I completely do, because his life experience was so vastly different than mine. You know, growing up in a I guess the word would be, there's no better term, completely dysfunctional family that bordered on abusive. Much different life than I had, which I thank them for being much more stable than his life ever was. And then I tried to pass that on to you guys, you and your sisters. So I think it's much more easily relatable to you because of that than it is for me to have understood my dad. My dad, when he was growing up, from what I can gather, was one of those boys that was across the street all the time smoking cigarettes and getting into trouble.
As one is wont to do.
Yeah.
So I guess the other thing that we've now across 3 episodes, we did an original episode, we did a revisit of this movie in season 2, I believe. And now this is the 3rd time we're talking about it. We're doing this like it's the first episode, but how is this film remembered? I don't know if I have a great sense, 100% sense of exactly how it's remembered generally. I am making a guess when we get to that for Legacy as to how it's remembered within the industry. But I do think it's a culturally important movie.
Yeah, I agree that I think it is. I think that the characters, I think if you said Marty McFly to most people, they would immediately know who you're talking about. And as much in the limelight for other reasons, mainly his own health, Michael J. Fox is remembered for this movie more than anything else.
I'm not sure. With the TV show he did with Family Ties, wasn't he just for the American market just a much more star, or does it only grow with the movies he did, like Back to the Future?
If I were to make a guess, and I didn't live through this period, so I'll let Dad kind of maybe postulate on that in a second here, but I think TV, unless you were like a truly seminal character, like it was almost ingrained in the public consciousness, like Archie Bunker, TV didn't have the same lasting power for stardom that movies did at the time. And TV operates a lot differently now than it did even at that point, because you can make yourself a star for TV. Thus, at this point, that Jack Bauer is more well known than anything else Kiefer Sutherland did during his movie career.
Well, for what kind of talking about that, the TV show, the popularity of the TV shows is significant, but Family Ties was one of a lineup that was on NBC on Thursday nights, along with the Cosby Show and Cheers and all that. So it was a powerhouse Thursday night. Hill Street Blues was at 9:00 Central, but this show didn't have a lot of staying power. It did not hit big in syndication. It kind of died out after a few years after it went off the air, when Michael J. Fox wanted to move on with his movie career, and the mother in the show, she wanted out too because she was tired of doing the show. So it kind of died out. This, on the other hand, has had a lot more staying power. I think anybody under, I'd say 55 would be hard-pressed to know what Family Ties was or have any concept of it as a show.
And seeing it from this time, from this point of the lake, then while the Cosby Show and even Cheers made it to Germany, nobody ever knows Family Ties.
Oh, yes. I know.
You know?
Yes. We had.
I don't
know on ZDF.
It never became popular here. I didn't even know that it was shown.
The bigger shows later, like Married with Children or Home Improvement, sure. But from the 80s, okay, the Cosbys were the big player. That's right. Yeah.
We know, as you related to my father in the early 90s, how much Married with Children had an effect on you.
Oh, yes.
Kelly Bundy. Oh.
Absolutely.
Al Bundy is one of the big American idols for every German male.
He still is.
So, Dad, are we ready to give a little further background on the film? Do you have our plot summary ready for us?
I do. In 1985, Marty McFly, an average teenager, finds himself accidentally embarking on the most extraordinary adventure of his life. Through a twist of fate, he ends up transporting back to the year 1955 in a time-traveling DeLorean. As he navigates the charming yet unfamiliar world of the 1950s, Marty must ensure his parents still fall in love, overcoming the odds of high school drama and the villainous Biff Tannen. With the clock ticking, Marty races against time, seeking Doc Brown's help to harness the power of a lightning strike to fuel the DeLorean and propel him back to the future. Through humor, heart, and a pulse-pounding sense of adventure, Back to the Future weaves a timeless story of self-discovery, love, and the extraordinary impact one person can have on the course of history.
Thank you. Did you know? The rights to the film and its sequels are owned by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. In a 2015 interview, Zemeckis maintained that no reboot or remake of the film would be authorized during his or Gale's lifetime. I have a feeling that it's not going to be during Michael J. Fox's lifetime either, and for at least a decent period after he finally passes, because it's going to be too awkward. Did you know? Writers Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis received a fan letter from John DeLorean after the film's release, thanking them for immortalizing his car. Did you know? In 2010, during a cast reunion, Michael J. Fox said that strangers still call him McFly constantly. Fox said that the most remarkable instance was when he was in a remote jungle in the South Asian country of Bhutan, located between China and India, in the eastern Himalayas. A group of Buddhist monks passed him, and one of them looked at Fox and said, "Marty McFly?"
Yeah.
Did you know? Doc's distinctive hunched-over look developed when the filmmakers realized the extreme difference in height between Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox. Fox is 5'4.5", so almost exactly my height, while Lloyd is 6'1". To compensate for the height difference, director Robert Zemeckis used specific blocking where the two often stood far apart at different camera depths. For close-ups, Lloyd would have to hunch over to appear in the frame with Fox. The same approach was used in the sequels. And with that, we will take our first break, and we will be right back. Next week, for our 264th episode, we welcome back Walter Gaynor of Boss Locks Media for the next up in our Summer of Toys, as we discuss Toy Story 2 from 1999, directed by John Lasseter, written by Andrew Stanton, Rita Xiao, Doug Chamberlain, and Chris Webb. Cinematography by Sharon Callahan, music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Joan Cusack, Kelsey Grammer, and Don Rickles. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Okay, Dad, we left off at Best Performance. Who do you have down?
Michael J. Fox. Just the simple fact that Eric Stoltz was originally in this film and it wasn't working, and then Fox came in and hit a home run shows me the importance of his skills as an actor and comedian to the overall quality of the film.
So I think Zemeckis got very lucky with this film. I think this is an actor-driven film that most of the performances actually in the film carry the film, because the script itself, at least in my opinion, is not as good as some people have claimed. Like, I don't quite understand the Writers Guild of America putting it as one of the great screenplays, because while it has some good premises and it occasionally delivers some decent lines, I think there are a lot of plot holes in here, as you'll see in my remaining questions as we end up at the end of the show. But that being said, I don't think the movie works without Michael J. Fox. I think he creates a character that is relatable to people, particularly children and teens, that this was kind of their movie. And similarly, you have performances by the rest of the cast rounding it out so parents could also watch this. So it was a more universal movie because he's in it. So I also have him as my best performer.
Well, and the point I was going to make about this is this film is really an extension of television of the 70s and 80s, because Michael J. Fox's character in this film is not that far off from his character on Family Ties. And for that matter, who I'm going to tell you is my second best is Christopher Lloyd. The character of Doc Brown is nothing more than a more toned down version of Jim Ignatowski from the TV show Taxi. So these are two characters that were created on television and transformed over to a film.
I think that they cast both of these actors, because of their work on television, fitting a particular personality type, but not necessarily that the characters were created there.
The chemistry between the actors is working very, very good.
Specifically between Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox. This is absolutely clear. But I would not set Christopher Lloyd on the second best actor on this movie. I probably would go with Crispin Glover, even though it's not too much regarding content, what he's bringing in. And maybe this is because I just saw it the second time in my life in English, all the other times in German, and the German translation from the scenes of Crispin Glover was not so good. And in English, yesterday, he made it much better in my eyes. And since we are going to talk about this today here, I looked a little closer at this yesterday, about the screenplay and everything, and specifically Crispin Glover and Lea Thompson, the way they are acting, the way they are reacting, their impressions and everything. I looked a little closer to that. And this definitely took me more than Christopher Lloyd. Nothing against Christopher Lloyd. He's a great actor. And I love to see everything what he's doing. But kind of these two, Crispin Glover and Lea Thompson, they just took me more in this movie.
So who are your best performers?
I agree with Michael J. Fox. And Glover and Thompson are on number 2 and 2.
It's not so easy. Of course, the whole movie is a Michael Fox movie, absolutely. And he holds it. He keeps it forward. He has the balance of comedy, action, sci-fi. He balances very, very good. But the chemistry of the whole cast, even the very very good Valiant of Biff, he's a poor character. It's not much that he has, but he makes it so good that you agree with all the shit he eats.
I'm glad you bring him up because that's my best secondary performer is Thomas F. Wilson as Biff. I think that even though, as you mentioned, it's not a particularly deep character, but nobody's remembrance of their high school bully is a deep character. It's usually two-dimensional and give me your lunch money or I'm going to beat the shit out of you type of mentality. Well, in this character, that's really all we get because that's how it's drawn. He creates, though, with maybe a few offhanded lines or some in the moment, what is the word I'm looking for? Alterations in the script. He creates some comedy within the film that adds to the levity of the situation and takes it beyond the page. And so he is, not only from the way he looks, kind of the prototypical of what the bully would represent. And I think he kind of portrays this kind of rather classic villain character, but it also keeps the movie on an even kilter. So I have him as secondary.
Yes, and also the point that every one of us in his life has his own Biff somewhere. So you can find it, and that makes it good. Even the gang around him. You notice Billy Zane, which is interesting to see him, which he later becomes a big star in Titanic. So the complete cast, as I already said, the chemistry is very good and very balanced, and each line fits very good together. Like the lines that Biff had, McFly, someone at home. It's great.
I would go so far as to say, even though I don't think that Thomas Wilson was creating the archetype of the bully, he is the most recognizable version of this, and that for most of my childhood growing up, sitcoms, cartoons, etc., they were doing an impression of Thomas Wilson's character from this movie because it was such a popular and lasting, iconic pop culture character. Dad, most charismatic.
This one I really struggled with, but I'm going to go with Lea Thompson simply because I always liked Lea Thompson and kind of had a crush on her at that time, so I'm just going to go with that.
I think there's an argument to be made for the soundtrack being the most charismatic thing in the movie, because I think it does hold, to a degree, the film together in some ways. However, I'm going to go with Doc Brown because, one, I haven't nominated him for anything yet, and two, I think he's probably the second most important character in the movie, much in the same way that R2-D2 and C-3PO are representatives of Laurel and Hardy. I think Marty and Doc are basically a Laurel and Hardy team, where one kind of is the straight man in Marty, and he'll say certain things, and then Doc is playing off of those constantly. And so it allows for the comedic tension of the film, and it certainly furthers the plot line. But I don't think if those characters are not interesting, that we have much of a film. You have to get those castings right for this to make sense.
Yes, I think Doc Brown and the character, when you think of a weird scientist, you always come back to Doc Brown. Yeah, when he's rocking or running around the rooms, thinking of 1,000 things and
Great Scott.
Where does it come from? Do you know? I don't know. It's so funny. Or when he nearly signs to the camera, we send you back to the future. I don't know if the director told him to do or what is his own idea. I don't know. But or the only scene where Lorraine and Doc were playing together in the garage when she was talking to Marty and he recognizes she is having this big crush on Marty, and he gets an, oh my God, what's happening here? Yeah, the interaction is very nice.
A lot of this playing from Doc Brown was very comediantic, I would say. It's very much unrealistic, which is not meant negatively for me. And this is, I think this is why I go along with your recommendation to put him on the most charismatic character, even though, especially because this is so unrealistic how he is acting.
Yes, like the line, here's my setup from the city, and I'm sorry I couldn't build it in the right dimension because I don't have the time for it. And you think he really means it like that.
He's apologizing for this being such a rough model, which is really something so detailed, yes, where everybody else would have taken months for it. I mean, this is hilarious. This is really stand alone.
Let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here, and after that, if you guys want to nominate more, you can. I have the shootout at Twin Pines. Frankly, I know we were just talking about Doc Brown and Christopher Lloyd, but I don't think the movie really begins for the first 20 minutes. It's just a general exposition dump, and the movie takes off when Marty meets him at the mall parking lot. And once that takes off and we get into the premise of the rest of the movie, that's when the true movie starts for me. Then I have Calvin, which I think is self-explanatory, but for anyone that may or may not know that out of context, that is when he wakes up in his underwear with his teenage mother. Outwitting Biff, that is the infamous scene on the skateboard riding around town, and Biff ends up with a car full of shit. Then Johnny Be Good, which is, I will extend it out to like the entire dance sequence. I don't know if you want to include, I don't know if that necessarily includes George beating up Biff officially, but it at least should extend from their first kiss, their first dance, and into the actual Johnny Be Good playing. And then finally, lightning strike. So kind of the climactic scene of the film.
Johnny Be Good scene, definitely. I agree with you. It's really top of the list for this movie. But the whole scene, the story inside the scene is the problems Marty is having because he's kind of disappearing, can't play anymore, blah, blah, blah. This is the dramatic part of the scene. And when in the end his father decided to stay strong and take that girl, it rescues it. It was very drama. It was tensioning. It was very, very, very good. But what makes the scene so awesomely good was really the after that, really the pure Johnny Be Good part. So this is something what you should take in two parts. When everything is saved, that is when the Johnny Be Good scene begins. And before that is the part from starting with Biff getting knocked out.
Rescue out of the car.
Rescuing out of the car, Biff getting knocked out, and the kiss. And that is the point from Marty's dad opening the car to Marty's dad kissing Lorraine. That is for me the most, the best scene of the complete movie.
Recently, there is a little plot hole. We discussed it yesterday. When they rescued Marty out of the car, they said the party's over because we cannot play the guitar, and without the guitar, the band cannot work. Moments later, Marty is playing, then he starts disappearing and cannot play. So 80% of the song, there is no guitar in it.
And after that, after they finished the song, while Marty completely screwed up because he wouldn't play for half of the song or more, they were giving him credits and saying, hey, let's give them here some shit. So this is really, really unrealistic, though.
And even though the little racist scene in it, that Johnny Be Good was originally invented by a white guy. Chuck, listen to it. This is Marvin Berry. We're looking for a new song. Well, okay.
That will come up in Classicness.
That's okay.
I would also say, if you were to take it further on the nitpicks, what jazz band needs a guitar in order to be full or whole? It's not a central part of what they were doing. Anyway, any other scenes to add?
It depends on whether you count the scene with drinking and smoking and all that in the car with Lorraine and Marty, and then the hit. If you include that in the Johnny Be Good,
I did not.
Okay, then that should be a separate scene, because that one to me is...
Okay, so we already separated out the confrontation between George and Biff. What you're talking about is a third separation.
Sure.
And I agree, this is a really good scene, starting with them arriving at the parking lot. And this scene is pretty much ending when Biff is opening the door. And yes, I agree with you, Dana. This is a really, really good scene. And it's getting a lot of information, and it's really driving that movie and the story of the movie.
Okay. So we have officially 7 nominees then. Out of these, what is the best scene?
Best scene is the hit of Biff.
Agree.
Yeah. He turns one or twice, gets his eyes in all directions and get down. And all of us were sitting in our chairs and said, yes, he got him.
And in this scene, specifically the screenplay of Crispin Glover, the way his face impression, the way he's shaking, the way he's clothing his fist and it's shaking a little bit, and the way after he hit him, he's standing there looking down at Biff, can't believe what he has done. He has this expression, and then he sees Lorraine, and that is really a really, really good scene.
So I believe this movie has actually 2 climaxes, that being the first, and I would say the lightning strike scene is the second one. So I'm going to go for that one, because you're talking about a lot of different logistics into that scene, from the physical comedy of Doc Brown up on the clock tower to him having to slide down to making sure everything hits at the right moment. You have kind of all this timing that's going on simultaneous to whether or not Doc Brown takes the letter and whether or not in the future he will survive. So I do think that there's a lot of climactic tension to that scene that, if it doesn't work, given the name of the film, that I think it is somewhat of a linchpin, even though I would say somewhat of the cathartic or emotional climax is in the scene that you guys have picked.
Regarding that scene with the lightning bolt, me being an electrical engineer, I of course have a lot of problems with that. And yes,
Don't say.
Talking about realism, when we're talking about a time-traveling movie, yes, I know. But even on Star Wars or Star Trek, I'm always watching a little about for some kind of realism. And I have a lot of points here. So
if you want realism and scientific accuracy, go watch any podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is discussing films that you have to kind of subject yourself a little bit to the universe of the movie. And in that universe, a lightning strike gets 1.21 gigawatts of...
Not more or less.
yeah.
In exact that second, of course.
And the light speed is so slow that it doesn't make any difference if it hits at 4 past 12 and 20 seconds, or 4 past 12 and 22 seconds, or 4 past 12 and 67.
Don't worry, you'll have your space for nitpicks. This movie lends itself to a lot of them.
Let's go ahead.
This is one of the more unrealistic time travel movies there is, because there are much more realistic time travel movies. You have to kind of suspend all belief, but for me, it's the scene in the car, because it lets Marty understand that his mother was really a kid and behaved much like he did and did stuff that he did despite her thing. I think it's eye-opening when you realize your parents are real people that did all the stupid shit you did. So to me, that's the best scene, because I think that's what this movie is more about, is you go back to the future, but you're going back because this is really an opportunity to understand who your parents really are and that you're not much different than them.
Dad, favorite scene?
My favorite scene is Johnny Be Good. I laughed so hard in the theater when I first saw it because I thought it was just so absurd.
I have Outwitting Biff. One from, again, the cathartic response to it, where Marty's getting the best of the bully that's been terrorizing his dad for, at this point, decades, to riding around on the skateboard. So it's kind of got that adventure chase aspect to it. So it's a little bit high energized, finishing with the comedic release of his car being filled with shit. So to me, that was a favorite. Gentlemen, your favorite scenes?
Yes, I agree. The hit out was very nice done, and the composing of the camera angles, of the editing, how the faces look, and yes, it was very well done.
Yeah, the actors' impressions,
yes,
as well from Thompson, really, really good.
And really, if you think about the problem there, that what Biff was going to do is something for a comedy. It's not a light shit.
Yeah.
Most indelible moment, I have the lightning strike. The first thing I think about with this movie is the resolution of the movie. So for me, that's where I went.
For me, it's the closing scene. It's just the impact overall of how just slightest changes in what took place can alter the course of humanity or of history.
I'm going to need you to clarify exactly, because the resolution of the movie or the closing scene could be them flying away in the hover car.
I'm talking about when Marty goes home and he sees his family, much different than when they were there in the opening portion of the film.
I can't decide between exactly that scene, so I go along with you, Dana, or maybe the point when Doc Brown wakes up because he has a bulletproof vest, not killed. So maybe go with the last one being my favorite.
Alex?
The first time traveler was Einstein, the dog. He survived and he didn't know what's happening around him. And we're always glad when the animal survives.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, with that, we will take our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, And before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMote podcast and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 236 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Unfortunately, yes. And this is with some level of pain. George Wendt, 76, American actor, most known for Norm on Cheers, as well as appearances on Taxi and Alice, numerous other guest appearances on other TV shows. Was one of the very early participants in Second City in Chicago, the troupe. In fact, the Wendt family has a table sitting at Second City in Chicago that's available only to the Wendt family, which includes his nephew, Jason Sudeikis.
Certainly for somebody who grew up pretty much after Cheers went off the air, I've only caught bits and pieces of certain episodes. I've never actually bothered to sit down and watch it straight through. I think I watched with you a large portion of the first and second seasons, but that might be the furthest extent of what this was. But he's an iconic character from one of the most famous American sitcoms that's ever been created. I would say it's easily inside the top 5 of notable iconic sitcom TV shows. And obviously the outpouring online has been effusive, to say the least, this week. So it's certainly, I'm sure, for you and many other people that grew up with this show, it was right during your college years that this was like a big deal. And then going into your early adulthood.
And then into law school, yes. It was on through that whole period of time. And Thursday nights was the one night while I was in college and law school where I made a point of trying to take some time off and watch. It was Family Ties. It was The Cosby Show. It was Cheers.
So I can appreciate this at least vicariously for everybody that remembers his character and how important he was to that show. And so we remember him here fondly with a moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. That takes us to best, funniest lines. I will start here. My first one up. Marty. Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88. Doc Brown. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yes, that was a fun line. They never intended to make a second or a third part. It was just a joke. But during the success of the first part, well, they had no choice to build a new storyline for it.
Doc Brown, if my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious shit.
Yes.
Marty. Whoa, wait a minute, Doc. Are you trying to tell me that my mother has got the hots for me? Precisely. Whoa, this is heavy. There's that word again. Heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
That's really good.
Marty, this is Darth Vader from planet Vulcan.
I go as well with Marty. What the hell is a gigawatt?
Marty, Jesus, George, it's a wonder I was ever born.
Marty, if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything.
George, give me milk. Chocolate.
Marty, daddy-o.
Again, some of those idiots hit my car.
Yeah, that's questionable. Why again? How often does Lorraine's dad hit some teenagers with his car? Is this something what's happening on a regular basis to him?
Kelvin? Why do you keep calling me Kelvin? Well, that's your name, isn't it? Calvin Klein. It's written all over your underwear.
Stella Baines. You know, Marty, you look so familiar to me. Do I know your mother? Marty. Yeah, I think maybe you do.
Marty saying to his uncle, better get used to this bars.
Dad, you got any left?
Doc Brown. Then tell me, future boy, who's president of the United States in 1985? Marty. Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the actor? Doc Brown. Who's the vice president? Jerry Lewis? I suppose Jane Wyman is the first lady. Wait, Doc. And Jack Benny is Secretary of the Treasury.
All right. Doc Brown. No wonder your president has to be an actor. He's got to look good on television. No truer words have ever been spoken about modern American politics.
Amen.
Amen.
That's why we don't elect bald presidents anymore. You got any left, Dad?
Marvin Berry. Chuck, it's Marvin. Your cousin Marvin Berry. You know that sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this.
I'm out.
Stella Baines. He's a very strange young man. Sam Baines. He's an idiot. Comes from upbringing. His parents are probably idiots too. Lorraine, you ever have a kid who acts that way? I'll disown you.
It's on you, Dad, if you have any more.
Nope, I'm out.
All right, let's move to the Stanley rubric then. First up is legacy. This is a category measuring the legacy of the film as we split it between two different groups. That is 5 points awarded for the industry legacy and 5 points awarded for the general audience legacy, adding up to a full 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go first. For the industry, 2 more films were made within the first 5 years, so I can't really go there. I'll go that more with the next category. But I think it did have a significant impact on how movies were done, how time travel movies. I think there was a ton of those time travel movies that were done not too long after this. I think it really kind of cemented a genre of film, and the teen films of the 50s coming back again. There were several films in that era right after that in the late 80s to the early 90s that came in. The fact this is a film that's chronicled as being instrumental and impactful in Hollywood and in most of the top lists, I'm giving it a 4.5 for the industry. For the public, I think that this film has an enduring quality. I'm surprised when you mention this film how many people immediately know the characters, know the actors involved, and even can name the song Power of Love from Huey Lewis. It's endured for 40 years. So I'm giving it for the public a 5 because I can't remember too many films from that era that has had this much where the general public still resonates with the film, or the film resonates with the public.
And that's precisely why the longer I went on, as much as I wanted to give it your 9.5, I have to go a full 10. The simple fact is that every other time travel story has to measure itself by the rules of Back to the Future, whether good or bad. The Avengers literally had to address it in Endgame. It is the largest box office, I guess now second largest box office movie of all time because Avatar moved back ahead of it. Whatever. Top 2, top 3, whatever. Doesn't matter. But every other time travel movie has to measure itself against the rules created by this movie for good or evil. This movie is still universally well known. People who don't watch a lot of quote-unquote old movies have still seen this movie. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd have been eating out on this movie for as long as they can remember. This is what they are remembered for. We have a public consciousness of Michael J. Fox because of this movie. Popular cult series like Rick and Morty are specifically made with these being the primary archetype characters. It's essentially Doc Brown and Marty as Rick and Morty. So, I mean, this comes up in everything, and then you want to start going down all the lists that it's been nominated for, all the people that think of it a lot better than you and I do, Dad, who maybe dismiss it a little bit more. I think it is undeniably a 10.
Yes, there's not a lot to add. think about the car. No one ever was interested in the DeLorean. Then this movie came out, and it is a cult vehicle. And this was a bad car. They took this one instead of a refrigerator, I think, because this car was it was a very cheap car. It was a very bad car, and they could take it without big budget. The movie has, I think, a $20 million budget.
Yeah, but the DeLorean was not a cheap car. It was a high-end, special-ordered car. And that's why he went bankrupt, was nobody could afford it. It was stainless steel, so it would never rust.
And it did rust. It did rust really well because the covering was stainless steel. The bottom plate was not. And it was rusting as hell.
But, I mean, it was owned by people like Johnny Carson and people. That's who ordered them because they were, I mean, I think at that time it was like $100,000, which would be like $400,000 to buy a car now.
But I agree, the legacy of this movie is really high end, and I go with your 10, Thomas, for really the points which you have said, the music, the complete teenage impact, which was really state of the art of this time and still is, the state-of-the-art base of time traveling. I can't think of any other movie what so many people, no matter how old or young, know out of that time. Still know.
I shouldn't have to ask, but Alex, I'm sure you're at a 10.
Yes, sure.
You do not have to agree with me.
Yes, it is. The big point of Legacy is that they didn't make a fourth or fifth part. They would destroy it. Look at Indiana Jones or whatever.
Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Wars.
There's no need to get mean.
Yes, then I'm quiet. Good to be quiet in a podcast. Thanks.
We already stepped into the first points of impact and significance, when I'm not mistaken, talking about time-traveling movies, talking about the car. Is that right, Thomas?
Well, sometimes the categories do overlap slightly, but I'll explain kind of the differentiation here in a second. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
And I will admit that I have never seen part 2 or 3. I had no interest in seeing them because I thought one was so good that I would be nothing but disappointed to watch 2 and 3.
I think I've seen them each one time, and it was when I was like maybe 12, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range. And I have no real recollection other than Biff gets a hold of a sports almanac and uses it to bet to become like the richest man alive. But yeah, if that hasn't aged well. Anyway, so Dad, are you still at your 9.5?
Oh, I'll go up to 10 to make the math easy.
So that's a 10.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Now, for impact and significance, this is a measure of the impact and significance of the film within the first 5 years of its initial release. So roughly 1985 through 1990. What was the impact and significance of the film? Again, we split this category 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10 between how the industry was impacted as well as the general public. So while I don't think that this had quite the immediate response initially by the industry, I think it's tough to admit when you were, I guess, wrong. I think the script was rejected 44 times before it was officially made. And it kind of became an overnight sensation, but it still was not necessarily, even though the critics enjoyed the film, the public response was overwhelming. I don't think it completely took over pieces of the industry right away. I don't think that either Michael J. Fox or Christopher Lloyd went on to necessarily bigger careers as a result of this. But given the demand for, I guess, the VHS, the toys, the commercialism that surrounded it, and eventually resulted in 2 sequels within this 5-year period after its initial release, I have to go with about a 4 on the industry, and I have a 5 for the audience. I think the audience supporting this movie kind of dragged the industry into liking it more than it wanted to. So I have a 9.
All right. For me, I have 4.5 for the industry because I don't think it really did well. But I have to go with a 5 for the public. Okay, do you know what the top grossing domestic box office was for 1985?
I want to say like The Breakfast Club was in the top 5.
Nope.
This was number 1. I know that, but
this was number 1. Any other?
Are we talking worldwide or domestic?
Just the domestic. Any other idea of what the top or what was in the top 5?
Out of Africa.
Sure. No. Try Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was from 1984, though.
It's technically listed as being the domestic for 1985, according to DMB. Rambo, Rocky IV, and Cocoon.
Good thing you didn't go with the worldwide box office, because Out of Africa was number 1.
Why? I have no idea.
Everybody loves these giant sweeping epics with Meryl Streep and Robert Redford out in the jungle, or I guess the Sahara.
Well, anyway, so I'm at a 9.5.
All right, gentlemen.
For the audience, I go along with your 5. Definitely nothing to add on that point. For the industry, I would go lower. I'm not sure if I may be getting this point a little wrong, but what pops up in my mind is 2015, when that date came, the date where Marty McFly and Doc Brown went to in the second movie. And now, Dana, you never watched it, but this is when they started with all the technical shit, when the hoverboard come. Everybody was talking about inventing a hoverboard, how we can invent a hoverboard. Even in Big Bang Theory, they took up the subject, and they even came out with this electrical, I was about to say skateboards. They were not skateboards.
The Nike Max.
The Nike Max.
Yeah.
The little boards which you can stand up, and the kids still have it, and they call them hoverboards. And I think this was really an industrial impact out of that movie, but decades later. And you are saying in the first 5 years. So therefore, I was giving the impact a 4 on the industry.
But we'll take on. You're talking about the second part, which is not the topic here.
Okay, so I'm screwing it up a little bit. Still I stay at 9.
Okay.
I don't know. Really, I don't know.
That's fine. Go along with me.
You've heard all of the arguments.
Yes, I heard. Nothing to add. Nothing to disagree. All points are correct.
Well, if you give it a 9.5, it averages out to a 9.25.
Keep the math simple.
So that's a 9.25 between the 4 of us. All right, let's go to novelty then. Novelty is a measure of the originality of the concept. Sometimes that might be in the special effects. Sometimes that might be in the sound effects. Sometimes that might be in the storyline. Sometimes it might be in the acting. Something where it was a little bit audacious and creative in that portion of it. And then for the creativeness, how well did you execute on that idea? So here, I think the focus would primarily be on either the special effects, maybe the practical effects of the special effects, but also the storyline of the time travel and such. I think those are probably what we're going to most talk about in this category. But we split this category again between 5 and 5. 5 for originality, 5 for execution, for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. All right. For execution, there were some holes in this that I thought, the more times I watch it, the more I kind of go, doesn't make as much sense, the overall plot and arc of the story. But it was done well. The acting was good. The pacing was good. There's no down points in this. I think that it was executed within the storyline as well as could probably be done given the script. So I'm giving it a 4 for execution. Originality. This is a combination of sci-fi meets American Graffiti. And so I don't think it's that original because There were time travel movies, and there was American Graffiti and Hollywood Nights and a bunch of those films that went back to the 50s and talked about it. For that matter, even, I can't remember, I think Porky's came out before this. If not, it was right in that same time frame. But I mean, it's just kind of that flashback. So from originality, I'm at a 2.5 for that because I don't think it was that original, except I'm going to give it half a point up because packaging them, I think, deserves some. So I'm at a 7 overall.
Okay. The originality of this, I actually give it a 4. I don't know if your points sit as well with me. While there were time traveling movies, we're talking about like the adaptation of H.G. Wells's Time Machine. Like, as much as that is somewhat a time traveling movie, it still wasn't as prevalent. And some of this had not been universally sold to the masses. This was the first thing where I think most people, as a pop culture reference, started to go when talking about time traveling as a possibility or as something in the more common or in the vernacular. So I give it credit for that. It's also combining some different genres. And while you're talking about that it's basing itself off of 2 movies, the fact that it's pulling 2 movies together, I think, is somewhat novel. So by that standpoint, I do give it some originality on that side. I can't give it full 5 because I don't think this is the most novel thing that has ever been done. I think that's part of the reason why this movie was successful, is it is somewhat grounded in both parts in stuff that people knew, but it's hard to argue that this doesn't have a certain level of originality to it. Now, on the execution, this is where I'd like to be a little bit harder on the film. I do think there is like some obvious overacting. Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox like really overplay their parts in several sections. Michael J. Fox with his like constant voice breaking it gets a little weird when you see it in your 30s as opposed to when you see it when you're like 13. And Doc Brown is intentionally over the top during the entire course of the movie. There are plenty of plot holes in this, but from a humor standpoint, it still holds up for a lot of people, maybe better than it does for me. I don't have really any issue with a lot of the special effects and the, I guess, grounded nature, the practical effects of how this film was accomplished. I think it still looks pretty good on film. I think you maybe could have done a little bit better editing job. The first 20 minutes is kind of slow and meandering. And like I said, it doesn't really pick up for me as the film until we get to Twin Peaks Mall. Once that happens, then it's a pretty solid hour and 40 minutes. But until that point, we have a lot of exposition. So with that, I give it a 4 on that side, and that's a little bit more generous than originally I thought I would go, but I have an 8.
I'm partly following and partly disagreeing on this, on both of you. Dana, you were giving it an additional 0.5 for packing together, for combining things we already had in the past. I think this is a little too hard because show me one movie where you see something which is not made out of parts we had already in the past, this way or the other. And the way it was made here, the way it was combined here, this is really what's really kicking me. This is the point why I'm here giving it a solid 4, at least for this in this movie, for this category in this movie. The way that this movie was made, overacting, Thomas, you said it, and technical mistakes and so on. Yep. Here I would like to be a little bit more critical as well, even though it is you can well see it from beginning to the end. Picks up a little slow, but this is fine, and it has this funny moments, so you don't fall asleep. It's really a good viewable movie from the beginning to the end. So I'm not able to give it only 3 points here, so I stay here as well with a 4. So solid 8 in this category for me.
I think we've lost Alex as far as his interest level. He looks bored and nearly in sleep.
No. Just thinking about my points. because how many time travel movies we had before 85. One was the Star Trek Part 4. Was it before or was it after?
It was after. I guess it was after.
The Voyage Home is the year after.
Okay, so look at all the details they put into the movie, like the fact with the Twin Pines Mall. Then later it was the Lone Pine Mall when they hit one of the trees, and there were so many little parts you may not recognize when you watch it once. When you look at for the second time, third time, you always discover some new facts, and this makes it a lot more worthy. There are many movies where you cannot discover so many details, and so I think that puts the movie to another level. So for me, it's 4.5.
Okay, and the originality?
As I said before, there had not been many time travel movies, so they made the first case where all of them, where all the following ones refer to. This is a very big deal if you produce a movie and you are the point.
And everyone else is referring to you. You
Yes.
said it. Marvel Avengers. They literally named that movie. So, and that's not the only one.
Certainly. So, out of 5, where did you come down on that? Out of 5.
Out of 5.
All right. You had to screw with the math. So we have an 8.13 average between the 4 of us. It could have been an 8. Just that half point. Oh well. Moving on. Classicness. This is a category judging the general classicness of a film over time. And given that this is 40 years old, I think we have at least enough history with it to be removed to judge it as far as classicness. This category is out of a total of 10 points. We normally start at a baseline of 7 because it's easier for a movie to have aged poorly, particularly an 80s movie, than it has for it to have aged well. I think there are many points in this that we will potentially hit out at. But Dad, you normally lead this category for us. Please go ahead.
All right. We generally started at 7. And the humor ages very well. A lot of the scenes and the humor of the scenes ages very well. The concepts and such age well. There are 2 points in the film that I don't think age well. One, George is a voyeur. And the second point that I think does not age well is at all that a white guy created the classic rock sound of Chuck Berry.
So the incestuous relationship that you mentioned at the top is just fine with you.
And then I'm going to... No. And then, well, that's the third point, which is it's just creepy that mom would be in love with her son and waits until she kisses him to realize, this is like kissing my brother. Yeah. Okay, so I'm actually... those 3 points are enough that I got to go down from the 7 to a 6.5.
I think that's fair. I have many of the same points. The creepiness of your mom being into you and the reverse Oedipal complex of the whole thing. It's a little too Freudian for my taste, and so that does not help. George's voyeurism, I guess if you were to interpret it nowadays, yes, the 50s you didn't have an OnlyFans, but it's still not cool. So yeah, those aren't great. The cultural appropriations, much in the same way that like Elvis is the king of rock and roll because he basically stole black music, or Eminem is the most popular rapper for a good 10-year period because he basically popularized black music to white people. Yeah, I know it's a history lesson that we keep learning over and over. I don't know if I ding the movie so much for that per se. It's meant to be somewhat tongue-in-cheek and funny, but it's still not great. I will say the film deserves a certain level of timelessness, so I'll give it an extra point back and a modicum of humor, but overall I think I end up at a if I'm taking half points off for certain pieces. Oh, the other part being there are a significant amount of plot holes, and this movie does not obey its own fucking rules by the end of it. I think I have to take another point off for that. So I think all included, and let me do my general equation here. I have
so
a 6.
You have to do math for your own calculation? Wow.
Correct. I have a 6.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding this point. We're talking about the classicness of this movie, right?
Correct.
Then let me react to your points. Talking about going backwards. I'm going back in time. Talking about the plot holes. Yes, this is a point for me. Actually, big point, specifically from a technical view. This is something where I would take a little bit lower my votes for the plot holes, but not too much, since the movie still works really good, even with, or maybe even especially because of some of these plot holes. Talking about the racistic part, yep, these days you would maybe not have a white guy shown as the maker of one big part of very popular black music. Does this make the movie less classic? I'm not sure about that. And George being a peeper and having a strange scene between Marty and his mom in the car, this is part of the movie. This is driving the story. This is important in the movie, and I would never, I can't imagine this being not part of the movie. Therefore, I would not go down with my rating for this point. Not at all. Not for questioning the classical of this movie. This doesn't affect it. Specifically, it doesn't affect it negatively. I would even give it some credits for that, because this drives the movie, and this drives the story of this movie, which is still important when you look backwards. This movie is from 1985. When you look back, what does it mean to you today? How good does it work today? And therefore, for me, it's a solid 8.
Our final judge of the film.
When you're talking about plot holes and if there are some scientific holes in it which are not currency at all, well, the writer makes the laws, and if he put 2 lines more in it to fix some currency, what does it change? Nothing. It still works. So the only thing which we actually didn't talk about, the reward for Marty. He get back to 1955 and by accident, and he somehow had his arc, and he came back, and his reward was he opened up the garage and had a new truck. And this is something which is not so good. The best or the biggest reward should be his family is better than it was before, and he got his girl. If there is a car or not, I don't care. So this is the only thing. But for a 85 teenager, a car maybe is more important than the girl. Than maybe other girls, but the car is the car. Well, I don't know. When you switch through channels, you have 100 channels, and you switch through them, and there is Back to the Future.
You stop.
You stop there. You look it, And this is what a classic means. You stay there. You do not swipe away.
You know exactly what happens in the next scene, but still, you're gonna watch the movie.
You can follow each word, and you do, and you're still enjoying. What more classic will there be?
And your wife beats you with a pillow because you don't stop talking, but still, you watch that movie.
So for me, well, a completely accurate movie does not exist and cannot exist because it is a movie. It is science fiction. Someone is thinking about a story and produce it, and it's fine. It's entertaining. Just enjoy it and keep it with a 9.
Dad, are you willing to move up a half a point?
Make it
No.
math easy.
No.
You can move down half a point to make the math easy.
That is true.
I could go down a quarter a point to make it even harder.
No, that's not acceptable.
I'll stay where I am.
So it's a 7.38 average between the four of us.
Can I rise 3/8 of a point?
No.
Can we discuss this?
All right. Rewatchability. This is a fairly simple, straightforward, subjective category. How often are you basically able to rewatch this? On a scale of 1 to 10, it kind of turns into, if it's one of your favorite movies, it's pretty close to the 10. And if not, it's pretty close to the 1.
Let's make this short. The two of us, we go with 20.
Yeah, I figured as much. All right, so the real scoring begins at Dad.
It's getting only hard when there's on one channel Star Wars New Hope. You switch to Last Crusade. You switch to Back to the Future. You switch to Matrix.
Blues Brothers,
maybe. Sorry to disturb.
For me, it's difficult because there are certain films that I will rewatch and I rewatch on a regular basis and I have in a rotation. I like the film. I mean, I enjoyed rewatching it. I'll rewatch it again. It's just not one that I'm going to necessarily put on to rewatch because I know the story so well. And it's not, to me, the same thing that I can just put on when I'm just trying to veg out and I don't care. So I'm at a 5.5 because, yeah, I mean, it's one I'll rewatch, but I'm not going to rewatch it probably again for 5 to 7 years. It's just not necessary, and I got tons of other stuff to watch.
I bet you any money Thomas is doing something with 0.5 to make the math easy.
That is incorrect. Okay. As for me, unless I have to watch this movie, I'm probably not putting it on. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the movie. It's just not necessarily a favorite for me. I don't find it as endearing as some people. Frankly, I don't think a lot of 80s movies are nearly as good as most people make them out to be unless you kind of grew up with them. The 80s aesthetic and the high school films and such, while there are certain select few that I enjoy, it seems like most of the films that we review for this show, going back in time, do not particularly do well because, well, one person that went through the 80s didn't like most of the pop culture that was going on at the time and was super self-serious. And another person had yet to be born and is much more a child of the 90s and 2000s, which is a completely different aesthetic. So they don't have the nostalgia pull that would measure up. So we kind of treat these a little bit more objectively and removed than probably a lot of people who are reviewing 80s movies who have a certain level of childhood attached to them, much like our guests. I have it at a 2 for whether I'd put it on of my own volition. And as far as something that if I came across it on cable or Tubi or Disney Plus or something else that I'm going to actively put it on and leave it on, it's probably another 2. So I have a 4 because I'm not probably watching more than a few minutes of this. And if it came to a commercial break, I'm probably flipping the channel. This doesn't have the same appeal to me as other films that I grew up with, like The Matrix or the Lord of the Rings movies or the Bourne movies. Even Star Wars has a greater pull for me than really this series. So Unfortunately, that means I'm the low man on this category and drag us down to an average of 7.38 between the four of us. As far as audience score on this one, we had a 93% for Google users and a 95% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.4. So to recap the categories, we had a 10 for Legacy, a 9.25 for Impact and Significance, an 8.13 for Novelty, a 7.38 for Classicness, a 7.38 for Rewatchability, and a 9.4 for Audience Score, giving us a final total of 51.54. Now, in comparison, when we originally did this episode, we had it at a 53.45, which would have been good for number 14 on the list. We then revisited this, where it was just Dad and myself. That went down to a 45.2, which is currently 129 on the list. Now, this is the first episode that we've just completely outright redone, and we're not focusing on revisiting or doing anything else. So, it currently places on our list between Do the Right Thing and Psycho for number 31. So it moves up almost 100 spots. So there you go. Top 31 film of all time, at least according to the rubric so far. As always, if you have any disagreements with our score, you can write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our social media at gmotepodcast, or you can write us on the website ronnieduncanstudios.com/gmotepodcast. That's GMOAT podcast. Remaining questions, or I guess in this case, it's just mostly nitpicks. Number 1, how does an AK-47, a weapon known to specifically be able to operate in the most dense and uninhabitable places on Earth, get mud in it, get water in it, get all sorts of other things in it, and never jam twice in the span of 1 minute and not kill Marty?
That's a very easy answer for this question.
It's a movie?
No, it's written in the script. So basically, yes. You're totally right. What I ever heard of the AK-47, even back then when I was young for 10 months in the German army, everybody was saying this is kind of the perfect rifle. In the morning you can use it to dig through your garden. By noon you can hammer a nail into the wall, and in the evening you can fight the NATO with it. So it's just dozens of thousands of terrorists cannot be so wrong.
It's an easy answer. It's Liberia. It's a Chinese knockoff.
You mean Libya?
Libya.
Yeah, Liberia and Libya are very different places, which leads me into my next question, Dad. How many Americans do you think could find Libya on a map?
I could.
I think it's probably 15%. I actually question if we were to ask this question on Monday in the staff meeting and just put up a map and then randomly drew one person out of the audience to try and locate it.
Should we like point to the office manager?
Do you want to sleep in your own bed anytime soon?
I bet you any money at least 50% of the Americans will be able to find Libya at least on Google Maps.
Okay, well, that's a different barometer.
I'm not sure they could even spell it correctly so they could find it on Google Maps.
That's why it's only 50%.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Anywho, moving on. How is there enough space in a mall parking lot to get up to 88 or 90 miles per hour?
That question was puzzling me a little bit. I mean, we're talking about America. Everything's biggest there. I would think any parking lot is bigger than the biggest Autobahn here in Germany.
Except at the end of the film, he's asking, we don't have enough road. And the road goes out like well a ways. The mall parking lot is much smaller, and he's already making comments how we don't have enough road to get up to 88. I don't know how, when you're going from a complete standstill, you could get up to 88 miles an hour in almost any mall parking lot that isn't like the Mall of America.
When he's taking a big curve.
You wouldn't take a curve, otherwise you're slowing down.
Yeah, I guess.
But when you accelerate?
The mistake is probably not the parking lot, but the last scene on the straight road. That is probably the mistake, and the parking lot is probably right. No, we can't judge this. Not seen enough parking lots in America.
That's fair.
And the acceleration of the DeLorean shouldn't be compared with the acceleration of the VW bus.
Well, that's true, but that's not exactly
with some guy standing out of the window and firing, which is not the best case of aerodynamic.
Yeah, nothing against the VW bus, even though I really don't like it. Not only because it's VW. And yes, the DeLorean not being the supreme car at all times, but really comparing the acceleration of this car with that car, no.
All right. Another rather gaping plot hole that people have pointed out for decades at this point. Wouldn't Marty's parents remember that they met him in the past?
Without any photographs, without any whatever. They met only a few times, 2 days in school. I don't think they will remember how this guy was looking 30 years after.
No, the way that the memory in your brain works, no, it would not happen. They met Marty a week when they were young, and Marty looked like. And then they met him again 20 years later, or what is it, 15 years later, when he was born, and then he raised day by day as their son. And suddenly he looked a little closer to that guy which they met back then. No, I think the way the brain works will protect them from that, from getting this connection.
The question would be, why did they use the name Marty only for the third child and not for the first? Not for Dave.
That's a good point. Lorraine said Marty is a nice name. Why wouldn't they name their first kid after Marty?
Or how would they necessarily remember not to punish an 8-year-old kid for burning the rug?
Probably they never did. And this is just a nice try, but never worked. They forgot this word totally and never thought of this, even not when he almost burned down the house.
So I did find in the research almost the exact time that we did the original episode of this, April 2020 to be exact. Back to the Future screenwriter Bob Gale finally decided to explain the plot hole question about why Marty's parents didn't remember him as the kid in high school who got them together. Quote, bear in mind that George and Lorraine only knew Marty/Calvin for 8 days when they were 17, and they did not even see him every one of those 8 days. So, many years later, they still might remember that interesting kid who got them together on their first date. But I would ask anyone to think back on their own high school days and ask themselves how well they remember a kid who might have been at their school for even a semester, or someone you went out with just one time. If you had no photo reference after 25 years, you'd probably have just a hazy recollection. So Lorraine and George might think it funny that they once actually met someone named Calvin Klein, and even if they thought their son at age 16 or 17 had some resemblance to him, it wouldn't be a big deal. I'd bet most of us could look through our high school yearbooks and find photos of our teenage classmates that bear resemblances to our children.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely.
Bullshit.
Yep.
Okay, I just had this conversation with somebody. I went through my high school yearbook, senior yearbook, right before my 40th class reunion. And I kind of was in multiple groups. So I kind of it was in various things. My graduating class was 463. I knew approximately 420 of the kids and could tell you a story about almost all of them.
You are the outlier. My issue with this is that everybody, when you're a couple, remembers the approximate time of when you got together and the story of how you got together. And to not remember one of the central figures in that plot seems unfathomable to me.
No, I don't agree. These figures, they met him over the whole week for what? 4 hours? Maybe maybe less than 4 hours in their life.
He stayed overnight with his mother's family.
Overnight, but she did not spend the night with him.
Okay, give it 2 days. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're talking about a few days. Biff, they had him for semesters. They met him day by day by day. So Biff is the interesting person which they remember too. If it wasn't about Biff, they wouldn't be together. That's what they said in the end of the movie. But Marty McFly, they met him just for, you don't count it in days, you count it in hours.
I will give it this much. When I first met your mother, I was trying to figure out, because I ended up taking almost the entire bridal party out for drinks on me, even though I was broke, just so I could spend time with your mother. And if I had to go back, I would say that most of the bridesmaids were nondescript. I could not tell you what they looked like or their names at this point in time because I was so focused on her. That much I will give you. But in this context, I have a hard time believing it.
All right, moving on. Let's go to the lightning strike scene. Why doesn't Doc go out on the roof of the clock tower instead of on the clock itself? The cord itself had to have been dropped, and it was just kind of dangling, but it was tied to the top of the statue or whatever that's on the roof. Going onto the clock tower to try and reach for the socket doesn't make as much sense as going out to the thing it's tethered to and then trying to pull it in so then you can replug it back in. I don't understand the logistics of it other than the physical comedy of watching him try and like dangle and creating some rather tense moments in the film.
I can think of an easy explanation for this. I can think of many easy explanations for this. Getting to the clock, there was a door, there was easy access to that point. He doesn't need a ladder. He doesn't need some kind of climbing equipment to get to the roof. He could easily get to there. What proof do we have that there is any kind of easy access to the roof? How complicated was it for him to get to the roof to tie the cable up there? And he obviously did it before. He exactly knows how to get to the roof. So obviously he knows getting to the roof would take him another 10, 20 minutes because he has to handle a ladder or anything. And that point where the cable is dangling down, there's a door at the watch, and he probably checked that out all over the day and knows exactly the physics there. And this way he knows this is a point where he can get within a minute or two, and up to the roof he would need like a quarter hour or even more. I can easily imagine this. Why should there be a very easy roof access to a roof? A roof is a dangerous place. There's no guard around it.
All right, fine. I will grant you a certain level of pliability or flexibility in that response. However, he slides down the cord to be able to plug it in at the other end. What is he sliding down? It's only tethered on one side. What is it anchored to on the ground? It's been unplugged.
On the tree. It's stuck in the tree.
Yeah, but it comes off the tree. It comes unplugged.
No. The plug, better is not basically not the plug, but the socket. It is stuck inside the tree. He was pulling it as hard as he could, but it was stuck inside the tree, so he couldn't pull it out.
Correct, but then it does pull out because he plugs it into the thing that he has at the top. And so because it's loose, it's not stuck in the tree where it's anchored enough that he could slide down it. It comes out from underneath the branch.
It was still in the tree. It plugged out, the socket plugged out of the plug, but then it got stuck in the tree. And when he was down, he had a hard time, a couple of seconds, to get it out of the tree to connect it back to the plug. So it was stuck in the tree, not extremely hard, doesn't need to be. When I'm not totally mistaken, Alex, please correct me. The plugs and the socket in the bottom, they whipped apart, and the socket got stuck in the tree.
And the other side went back over the street.
But on the physics of that, it still would not support his weight. That tree branch was not enough.
It doesn't have to support his total weight. By far maximum, most of his weight is supported by the double looped cable, which is over the clock. The clock sign. Yeah. What is it? What is it called?
It's a hand.
The clock hand, yeah.
You guys
That's
are
holding maximum of it. And while he's sliding down at the beginning, the bottom part is holding almost nothing. Later, it's holding a little bit. And physics with a nice graph, we can explain how much force is to that. But I can easily see that there's not enough torque pulling on that cable socket, pulling it out of where it was stuck in.
You guys are missing the fundamental point. Doc Brown ordered his equipment from Acme, and so the same principles apply to it as the Roadrunner.
Okay, I'll open it up to other nitpicks at this point.
Okay.
Anyone?
Definitely. Let me take my notes. I'm not sure if this is different here in Europe to America, but Calvin Klein underwear is not really cheap. And Marty McFly originally comes from a not very wealthy family. Why does he have Calvin Klein underwear?
Oh, back then it wasn't that expensive. It was pretty mass produced. It became kind of popular. I mean, the underwear and boxer briefs or the little briefs, Calvin Klein was about, same amount as Jockey or Fruit of the Loom. So I don't think that's a big deal.
Okay, thank you for that. I take it.
Okay.
It was different here. I had it before. I can't believe that Marty McFly, the music guitar player, band leader, doesn't know what a gigawatt is. It makes no sense to me.
The most questionable is how does a teenager has any relation to a scientist, which is, I don't know, 3 times of age? How do they come together?
I would say that Marty answered a advertisement in the newspaper to become his assistant. He's like an intern, and that's how the relationship works. But as to your point on the gigawatt thing, I'm sure you're probably correct. Although the public's general knowledge of what gigawatts were going to be is not high. And so if you're going to put that scientific term into the script, you have to have some exposition dump. And by golly gee, what's a gigawatt has to be it. Some character has to ask the question who...
Understand, yeah.
And there was no other a character who could do that.
Exactly.
I get you.
Any other nitpicks or remaining questions?
One scene in the beginning when Marty was filming and Doc Brown was explaining his time machine. Marty was asking, and Doc Brown was saying, Marty was asking if this sucker runs on plutonium, and Doc Brown was answering, "No, this sucker is electric." Or he's saying the sucker runs electric. Does he mean the car? Because the car runs on fuel.
I don't know. I also don't know how you can go from making it into or needing plutonium at one end and then somehow needing only a food processor on the other. It seems like a rather drastic leap in fueling.
You mean how, considering that you had 20 years ago to connect to the internet to now going just instantaneously? How technology transforms that rapidly? I agree with you,
Car
Tom.
technology and fuel has not changed all that much in 30 years. We still run on gas.
But this is the future.
If the technology would have gone forward as it should have, we would not run on gas anymore.
I understand that you have to suspend disbelief for movies like this, but even so. All right. Well, I want to thank both of our guests for coming back to do this episode with us. It's been 5 years. Hopefully in that time, things have gone well for you both. Knowing you both as I do, I think for the most part they have. I have seen you in person multiple times during that portion of time. But did you guys want to provide your social media accounts or anything that you would like to personally plug for yourselves? Or are you satisfied with just this being on YouTube and Spotify and all the other...
We're so old, we don't have any social media.
I mean, even my dad has TikTok.
I have TikTok, I have Substack, I have Blue Sky. I have Threads. You name it, I've got it.
Grinder?
No.
I don't know most of them. Never heard.
I have a phone number.
And I'll let you decide whether or not I have Tinder.
Okay. Well, anyway. Again, thank you to everybody for being a part of this episode. I don't envision that we're going to completely redo whole episodes of the show very often. This was a special exception due to the complications of the original episode and, well, just the advancement in technology and the evolution of the show. But again, thank you to everyone for being involved. So that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much having us with you in the podcast, and we will be happy to join you in the same podcast again for the same subject in like 10 to 15 years.
You never forget kids like Emily or Andy, but they forget you. Next week for our 264th episode, we welcome back Walter Gaynor of Boss Locks Media for the next up in our Summer of Toys as we discuss Toy Story 2 from 1999. Directed by John Lasseter, written by Andrew Stanton, Rita Zhao, Doug Chamberlain, and Chris Webb. Cinematography by Sharon Callahan, music by Randy Newman, starring Tom Hanks, Tim Allen, Joan Cusack, Kelsey Grammer, and Don Rickles. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMOTepodcast or at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle @GMOTepodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM, and our technical provider is Riverside FM.